Welcome to Graphite Hub's interview series, a series dedicated to all things graphite. Today, we're joined by Hugues Jacquemin, CEO of Northern Graphite. So, welcome, Hugues.
Yes, thank you. How are you?
Right now, yeah, I'm doing well, thank you. It's great to have you here. So, could we start off with, if you wouldn't mind, just providing an overview of Northern Graphite to our viewers?
Yeah, sure. We're a Canadian company. We're listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange, and we are basically a graphite mining company. And we are the only producer of graphite in North America. We have an operating mine in Quebec called Lac des Îles, and it's been in operation for 30 years now. And the mine basically services the North American, European market, a little bit of the Asian market. And we produce about 15,000 tons per year out of the mine in Quebec, all different types of flakes. And the mine is known for its quality and the quality of its flakes. We also have another mine in Namibia, in Okanjande, and the mine there is actually in care and maintenance at the moment, and we're looking for funding in order to basically pick up the plant and move it to the mine site, because when we bought it a couple of years ago, the processing plant was actually 70 kilometers away in an old fluorspar mine. And so we're basically looking for funding, moving the plant onto the mine site, and then restarting production of about 31,000 tons. And we're hoping to do that in 2026. And then we have a development project which is at the feasibility level in Ontario. It's called Bissett Creek. It's just located between Ottawa and North Bay. And that mine basically has 1.2 million tons of graphite in the ground, and we're hoping to start construction in 2026. And the first module would produce about 44,000 tons. And then we have our R&D center in Germany. Back in February of this year, we actually acquired the carbon battery materials division of a German company called Iles, and they have been developing a product called PoroCard, which is a hard carbon porous material, and it's used in batteries, lithium-ion batteries, as an additive to improve performance, and it's used in solid-state batteries as a thin layer to be able to make all solid-state battery operate with lithium metal. And we are also developing a large battery anode material facility up in northern Quebec in a place called Baie-Comeau. And the intent for us is to basically produce the graphite in our three mines and then ship them over to Baie-Comeau and centralize all the battery anode material production there. And we're hoping to start construction in 2026 and start production in 27 or 28. We have about
Great. No,
100 people in the company. And as I said, we're selling material today in North America and Europe. We have about 100 customers.
yeah.
Most of those customers are buying our graphite for industrial applications and not for battery applications.
Right. Okay. No, it's a great introduction. It kind of sounds like there's quite a few different projects on the go at the moment. Um, Kind of switching focus, we kind of saw, I think it was a few weeks ago, the joint development agreement with Rain Carbon. Could you kind of walk us through the purpose of this partnership and kind of share why it's such an exciting development for Northern Graphite?
Yeah, absolutely. We when you make battery anode material, you have to basically take the flakes that we extract from our mines and float, and you have to mill them down. You have to give them a shape. Then you have to purify them, and then you have to coat them with a very thin layer of carbon uh, in order to um, in order to protect the graphite anode material when you do a first lithiation. Because if you don't, you will lose quite a lot of capacity, because that first lithiation will damage the layer between the flakes of graphite, and therefore the coating technology itself is very key.
Yeah.
And we don't actually produce any coating ourselves, and therefore, we were looking for a partner on the coding side to be able to develop some products with us and to secure the supply of the material moving forward. And so we started talking to Rain Carbon. They're actually a US-based company. They're headquartered in Connecticut, but they
Yep.
have operations in the US, in Canada, and in Europe, in Belgium and in Germany. And they
Yep.
produce most of their coating materials in Germany and in Canada. And they have recently opened a development lab up in Ontario. And so the agreement for us is key because it enables us to access, all of the technology that Rain has developed over the years to produce battery anode material and combine it with our graphite and our battery anode material technology that we're developing in Germany at our R&D center. And the objective for us is really to develop three new products that
Yep.
will allow us to basically better perform in the battery. Today, if you're building an anode, you can use natural graphite or synthetic graphite. And the choice of the material will really depend on what the application of the battery is. And
Yep.
most of the application for natural graphite today tend to produce more gas and swell more in the battery itself.
Yep.
And one way to counteract that and to improve the cyclability, the charging speed, and the performance of the battery as a whole, as well as reduce the swelling of the graphite, is to act upon the use of a coating.
Okay.
And by combining how we process the graphite with the technology that Rain has developed on the coating, we think we can make a superior product.
Yep.
Um, and of course, we can secure the supply, which for us is important, especially out of their plant in Hamilton, because it's quite convenient for
Yep.
Baie-Comeau in Northern Quebec.
No, great. And I think especially in kind of today's environment, going in with a partnership is key for, both one sharing the risk and also the collaboration and yeah, especially the downstream market. So yeah, no, I look forward to kind of seeing updates in the future on that. Um, Now kind of shifting focus a bit, you kind of mentioned earlier on about the Okanjande project. Currently, as you said, it's in care and maintenance. So kind of outside the kind of looking for financing to move the plant, kind of what other kind of factors will kind of influence the timing of the restart?
Well, actually, from a timing perspective, we think the timing is between 12 to 18 months. Actually, most
Yep.
of the equipment is already there.
Yep.
So it's really more about creating the infrastructure, building the tailing dam, bringing the water, getting the power there. So, all the permits are in place. We've been producing from that mine site before. So, the mining itself is a known quantity.
Yep.
And it's really about picking up the plant, moving it, building the civils, reconstructing it, and connecting the utilities and building the tailing dam. So, I mean, it's still a lot of work, and it will cost us about 35 million US.
Yep.
But we think we can do that relatively quickly. And
Yep.
most of the people that are working in the company today were involved in that project when it was created in 2016. In fact, I was the CEO of Imeris Graphite and Carbon at the time, and that mine used to belong to Imeris, and we bought it from them in 2022. So we also have the expertise to make sure we can move relatively rapidly. I
Yep.
think from a decision point of view, what's key for us is really to secure more of the demand for the product that we would produce.
Yep.
And most of that material would go into batteries. And
Yep.
therefore, we're working hard with a number of different OEMs and battery manufacturers around the world to be able to secure the demand for that product so that, that will really drive the decision point alongside the
Yep.
financing, obviously.
Yep. Okay, no, it sounds good. And then also kind of switching to the the expansion of Lac des Iles. So I understand that that's quite a core focus going forward. So kind of what challenges do you foresee in ramping up production, and kind of how will you manage cash flow pressures, in this quite a tough market at the moment?
Yeah, well, the mine at Lac des Îles, which is the picture you see behind me at the moment, has been in operation for 30 years. We bought it from Iles in 2022, April of
Yeah,
2022. And when we bought it, the mine was basically extracting the material from a pit that actually I opened in 2014. And
yeah,
that pit is coming to its end of life.
yeah,
And what we want to do is basically we did a large exploration campaign on site within the
yeah,
mining lease last year, and we identified another 200,000 tons of graphite in the ground. And
yeah,
so we're now busy getting ready to open that new pit.
yeah,
Um, and before we open it, what we wanted to do is basically do some maintenance in the plant because in the last 6 or 7 months, we've been increasing production. We actually increased sales, by more than 50%. But that has basically uncovered some maintenance issues that the plant needed after such a long time in operation. And so we're basically taking the plant down for a couple of months to do all that maintenance work during November and December, which are really slow months in terms of sales as well. So
yeah,
it's good timing. And then coming back strong, in January, the mine itself, actually generates cash flow. So most of the cash flow that we will use, to open that new pit will come from our operations in Lac des Îles. But of course, we are also busy talking to our customers and making sure they're on board with what we're doing. And for us, it's important because with the demand for graphite in batteries, most of our industrial customers are quite concerned about what could happen to the supply of graphite. Um,
yeah,
and as we've seen with the new tariffs that have been imposed in North America, sourcing from China is really not a very good option anymore,
yeah,
especially with the fact that the Chinese are also controlling the export of the graphite itself. So at any point in time, they can stop shipping the material. And what we've seen in the market is that they tend to export value-added products, but they tend to keep let's say, the raw graphite flakes within China if they can.
yeah,
And so I think working with the customers in North America in particular is really important so that we can partner in the financing of that pit moving forward.
yeah,
That
yeah,
pit is a little bit more expensive to operate than the other one because the strip ratio is a little higher. Um, and of course, we have to do some maintenance in the plant.
yeah,
Um, and so, we're looking to get customer support to do that as well.
yeah. No, great. And looking to the broader graphite market, at the moment, investors in the space, it's all pretty doom and gloom. But I think I saw an article Northern Graphite wrote a few months ago around kind of optimism and a potential market turnaround, mid 2025. Kind of, are you starting to see any indicators or market trends that give you confidence in this timeline?
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of media noise in the last few months about the fact that electric vehicles are slowing down and that, adoption is not as fast as everybody thought and so on and so on. But the reality is, demand is still very strong for electric vehicle. I mean, we're looking at, 20% year-over-year growth in the first 7 or 8 months of the year, especially if you look at the SNE data, which I think is probably one of the most accurate company out there in terms of a forecast of demand for electric vehicle. Um, and so if you look at the number of battery projects that are scheduled to come on stream in North America and in Europe over the next 4 to 5 years, you're looking at probably two to 2.5 terawatt of power. And in order to feed those gigafactories, it means that you need to have about 2.5 million tons of graphite on an annual basis. And we're talking about, graphite battery anode material, not graphite. And the yield to transform natural graphite into a battery anode material is between 50 and 60%. So that means if you need 2.5 million tons of battery anode material, let's imagine that 50% of that is natural graphite, which usually is the case. You need basically 2.5 million tons of natural graphite flakes. And today, the consumption in Europe and in the US is about 100,000 tons a year. So, the demand is absolutely enormous compared
Mm.
to what it has been over the last 30 years.
Yeah.
And therefore, I think we're going to see as these new factories are built, we're going to see that demand start to come. And I think, within 2025, because it takes about 2 years for a product to be qualified into a battery. And we've already started, producing some samples and talking to OEMs about qualifying the material. And so, I think we will start to see much more concrete demand for those applications in batteries in 2025.
Yeah.
And even if it's only 100,000 tons, which would be basically 100 gigawatt of power, uh, that's a huge number compared to what we've been supplying the market. It's like doubling the market.
Yeah.
So, I don't know how anybody can think that the fact that, the growth of purchasing of EVs is only maybe 7 or 8% a year, but the number of gigafactories that are being built in North America far outrun whatever forecast we can think of. So I think we will see strong demand in 2025. I think the other point which is very important is that we're a founding member of an organization called NAGA, which is a North American Graphite Association. And with NAGA, we have been lobbying very strongly with U.S. government and the IRA in order for us to basically protect this nascent industry from China, because China has been very aggressive in their pricing, and they've had quite a lot of overcapacity, and therefore, when you go to market with a potential product and you start talking about qualification and pricing and supply contracts, it's impossible for us to compete with China at the same level of pricing. And so, now these tariffs have been announced and they will come into play. One has already, three of them have already come into play this year, and another three will come into play in 2026. And then this foreign entity of concern rule, which basically does not allow a battery or car manufacturer to gain the IRA rebate if they use any material that has been built in China. And therefore, that has really accelerated things for us, because these battery manufacturers and these OEMs, they want to have an American-based or North American-based supply chain so that they can get the access to a full $7,500 rebate. And I think that has really helped us and other graphite companies, that are trying to enter the space.
Yeah. No, there's definitely a lot of positive macro factors at play at the moment. And yeah, let's all hope that 2025 is better than the last 12 to 18 months in the graphite space.
Yeah, I think
Um,
there's a lot of questions, in Europe compared to North America. I think North America, the things are clear, the rules are being put in place, and I think that has really helped us, have much more concrete discussions with potential customers. However, in Europe, that's not so much the case, and therefore, I think in Europe it will take more support from the government in order for us to be able to compete with China. Some of the large Chinese players have announced capacity in Asia, but also in Morocco. And so they're intending to supply the market that way. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw, some protection of these nascent industries in Europe as well. There's a couple of companies there that are trying to launch some projects, but it's much harder there than it is in North America for sure.
yeah. Well, I think I even saw today the EU has imposed tariffs of up to, I think, about 45% on Chinese EVs.
Yeah,
So yeah, hopefully that does start to trickle down into the critical mineral space.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the first step for them, is to attack the EVs. I mean, in the US, it's 100%. In Canada, it's 100%. In Europe, it really depends who the manufacturer is, and how they've been competing so far. But I think at some point they're going to have to look at critical minerals there too, because they don't have, the number of graphite deposits that we have in Quebec. I mean, in Quebec, you have a lot of graphite today. So, that's definitely helping. In Europe, there is some development happening in Sweden and in Scandinavia, in Finland. Some synthetic graphite producers are also looking at developing some projects in Norway, for example. Um, and so, I think the European countries or the European Union will have to find a way to protect these industries and to make sure that they can basically be profitable and attract investment. Otherwise, they'll be totally dependent on these Chinese manufacturers, which is really not a good thing in the short, medium, or long term.
No, no, exactly. Now, kind of finally, just as we wrap this up, kind of what key milestones or developments should investors expect to see in the next 6 to 12 months for Northern Graphite?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, opening our new pit in Lac des Iles, is important, and securing demand from the industrial customers in North America is really important.
Yeah,
I think finalizing some agreements with some OEM and battery manufacturers is really important for us, because that will then trigger, starting the project in Namibia. It will also help us fund our project in Baie-Comeau, and leveraging the team in Germany to, on the one hand, continue to commercialize the PowerCard product, which is really interesting for us. We think we have a very strong play in this all solid state battery market. Lithium ion battery is really the main technology today, but come 10 years from now, we will see solid state battery play a much bigger role. Solid state batteries don't really have an anode, and so they don't use graphite at all. However, they need this protective layer in the battery, and we have a really good solution with PowerCard to be able to provide that material to create that protective layer, and so that can be a huge market for us. And although the quantities are small, the price is much higher because
yeah,
the material is a synthetic material. So we see a great opportunity there. So for us to drive that with the team in Germany is really important. We have a demonstration plant in Rotterdam that is actually owned by a partner, and together with that partner, we're very busy in Asia, in particular, because that's where most of the development is, to secure some demand for that in 26 and 27 already.
yeah,
Not huge demand, but significant. Um, and then, the same with the team in Germany, developing the products with Rain to go to market and start qualifying some of those materials with the OEMs and the battery manufacturers, as well as doing the engineering work that's required to build the plant in Baie-Comeau, and making sure we can finance that project. It's interesting, it's much easier to finance a processing plant than it is to finance a mine. And so I think the big advantage we have as Northern Graphite is we already have operating mines, and we can build them and we can extend them, by modules. So, we could even imagine to double the size of that plant in Lac des Iles. And if we did so, it would be relatively easy to do because the mine is proven, the deposit is proven, and the process is proven. Same thing in Namibia. The mine was in operation, so it's a known quantity. There is a relatively low risk of not being able to produce the material, and so that gives us a really big benefit because we reduce the risk of investors in
yeah,
being able to produce what we say we can produce.
yeah,
On the other hand, when you look at a processing facility, the technology is pretty much off the shelf today. A lot of it comes from China, there's some of it in Europe. And so by leveraging the team in Germany that has 10 years of experience in the field, it really helps us, make our investors comfortable that we can actually deliver. And the key for us is to get some offtake agreements with customers so that we can go and access some of the funding that's available by the Canadian or the European governments, as
Yeah.
well as raise the debt on a project financing basis. And so that's really the job, the next 6 to 12 months is to clarify all that as the demand starts to to happen. In 2025, I think we'll start to see much more sense of urgency by the battery manufacturers that are building these large battery factories. And at the beginning, they're not going to produce huge volume, but by 27 or 28, they will need hundreds of thousands of tons of material. And that's where graphite company like ours will really benefit from that.
Yeah. It definitely sounds like there's a lot going on, and the future is looking, yeah, more positive than the past. So I guess, yeah, thanks Hugo for joining us today. It's been a pleasure hearing your insights and yeah, your experience in the graphite industry. Sounds like you've been in the industry a while, so yeah, hearing your kind of knowledge has been invaluable. So thank you.
No, you're welcome. I've been in the graphite. I started in the graphite industry in 2014, so it's just
Yeah,
over 10 years now.
yeah,
And when I started, the lithium-ion battery industry was 2 gigawatt, the entire the entire lithium, and it was mainly used in electronics. I mean,
yeah,
electric vehicles were really not talked about a lot.
yeah. And then
And
now look at where we are.
yeah, today is 2 terawatt. Sorry, today is 1 terawatt.
Yeah,
So you imagine, it went from 2 gigawatt to 1 terawatt. It's amazing. It's
yeah,
amazing.
and just not too much time either. Like it's yeah,
No, I mean 10 years. It's
yeah,
nothing, right? For
yeah,
that kind of growth. So
yeah.
and it will get a lot bigger. I think the latest forecast that I saw from a presentation in Korea a couple of weeks ago is from SNE is talking about 4.8 terawatt now by
Wow.
2030. So it will be at least 4 or 5 times what it is today. You know.
Yeah. Wow. No, that's it's crazy. Cool. Well, yeah, thanks everyone for tuning into this episode of Graphite Hub's interview series. We'll see you next time.